Thinking of driving for Uber or Lyft on New Year's Eve? Here's some advice you should know. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and yes, I'm actually going to give Uber driving advice because here's the thing, while I have made it very clear that most nights Uber is not worth driving, or Lyft for that matter, New Year's Eve for most areas is actually the exception to the rule. So much so that I will actually be driving tonight on New Year's Eve, making that fat money. Yeah, it's like once a year now that I really make great money doing this, but you know what? You take what you can get, and as an entrepreneur, I'm not going to let that money-making opportunity go, and I've kind of decided I don't think or maybe I realize I should say, I've never actually given a advice video talking about what to expect on New Year's Eve or how you can best maximize your time and money. So and trust me, New Year's Eve is like the one day that even though I'm not doing it every single week, I have always done it New Year's Eve. I've got a pretty good idea how New Year's Eve works. So I'm going to give you the best advice I know how. Granted, we also know that I'm like in the city. Some people might be in little rural towns. It's going to be very different under those circumstances. But barring little things like that, this advice should serve you well. But before we begin, let's hear a word from our sponsor. And today's video is sponsored by Maximo, the rideshare automation app that allows drivers to safely and easily accept ride requests for Uber, Lyft, and Postmates. Whether you drive for a single platform or multiple platforms, Maximo's custom settings can help you drive more efficient, less distracted, and help you maximize your earnings. It will automatically accept one trip, turn off the other apps, and when your trip is over, it will end it, open the other apps, and accept the next trip, all without you having to touch your phone. Use referral code APP60 and get your first month free when you subscribe to Maximo. Now, the first thing we need to talk about, of course, is the surge. Because whether you want to hear it or not, the surge is what's going to determine whether or not you are successful at doing this, not the amount of rides you take. So, right now, there's two different kinds of surge. There's the multiplier surge and there's the flat surge. The multiplier surge is where it says, hey, you will make this amount of money this many times over if you take this ride. The flat surge is where it says we will give you a certain amount of money extra on top of each ride. And I'm going to state up front that if you have a flat surge, you are probably wasting your time. Go to a party, enjoy yourself. I'm not saying you can't make extra money. You will clearly make extra money. However, you will not have the unicorn night that some other people will. You truly make money on New Year's Eve when you get that 4 to 10 times multiplier on that long trip or even a medium-sized trip. But with the flat surge, you might get an extra $35 for your hours worth of time, where in other places you could make a couple $100 for that extra hours worth of time. So if it's flat surge, I'm sorry, this advice isn't going to help very much, and you're probably just wasting your time. Again, just go to a party. But for those of you who do have the multiplier, there are a few things you will need before you begin the night. First thing you will need a lot of barf bags. Now, this is one from the Dollar Tree store. I will have it in my car because they're fairly strong. You want strong bags that will not break. So whether they be barf bags or Dollar Tree or the Target bags or even actually the Barnes & Noble bags might actually break because they're paper. Make sure you have a bunch of these. I'm not saying it happens all the time. In fact, I have not once driven a New Year's Eve where someone's actually thrown up in my car, to my knowledge. But it's a much higher likelihood of it happening, so be prepared. Also, you have some music. Now, I'm holding this up symbolically, of course. It doesn't have to be an iPod. It could be a really long mix CD, or heck, it could even be your phone. Just if it's going to be on your phone, make sure that, basically it's not distracting you from driving. This is why I've always had the iPod. I've always used an iPod when I drive because if I need to change music or I need to pause it or I need to turn it down, it's its own device and I'm not fiddling around with the screen that I'm supposed to be paying attention to when I drive. And finally, and this might seem kind of strange, bring a book. because there is going to be a period of time where you're not going to be doing anything, so you're going to want something to read. So, what's my advice? When should I start? When should I end? Well, when you start and when you end is really up to you. But here's something that I have always held true. That somewhere between 11:20 and 11:45, whenever your trip ends in that area, turn the app off. Seriously, turn the app off. You can do driving before that time if you want. From my personal experience, you're not getting a lot of surge and you're not going to make a lot of money, but you can do that before if you want. But once 11:20 comes around, whenever that ride that I'm currently on comes to an end, I turn the app off. And here's why. Because you are getting very close to the ball dropping. And some people are smart. They realize that if they leave a little before the ball drops, they can get their ride home at a cheap discount price. They can pay the normal fare or as close to it as possible. They don't want to get hit with the surge, so they will leave early. And the problem is you could wind up with a base fare ride that's going to take you an hour. You don't want to be on a base fare ride when the ball is dropping, because after the ball drops, that's when the real money begins. So what I always did in the past is like around 11:20, 11:30, whenever it was convenient, I turned the app off and I found a place where I knew a lot of people were celebrating and would need rides. Now, personally, I have always started mine just outside of Disneyland. And I do this because, well, first of all, I am a big Disney fan. I like watching the Disneyland fireworks for New Year's Eve. Even though I can't hear the music, it's still nice to watch them. But the other thing is that a lot of people, and I mean, there's a lot of people who are going to be calling for an Uber and Lyft at the same time. The surge, I have seen get as high as 8.6 at Disneyland. And these people are usually not aggressive. They're not mean. Disneyland has a very good limit on the alcohol. They do a very good job at enforcing it, but it's still enough that people need an Uber or Lyft home. So therefore, I pick them up. Now, of course, it could be a little hit and miss on how far the ride is. Some people, they're just going down the street and you're not going to, it's not going to be a long ride. But even those can be profitable on New Year's Eve night. The first New Year's Eve drive that I did after the ball drop was at Disneyland. It was an 8.6 surge. I picked them up. They wanted to go like 3 miles. It wasn't very far. But that 3 miles was $49.50. Keep in mind, this was like 4 years ago. Uber paid a lot better back then. So you do want to be near this. Now, if you're not near Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm or Six Flags, then a baseball or football stadium will also suffice. A mall strip where there is a ton of bars, that would also suffice. What you want to do is you want to get near a place where you know there's a lot of people celebrating and a lot of people who will need to get home. Now, once the ball drops, after 5 minutes, you will see the surge map flare up like a Christmas tree. I always recommend waiting, unless it just starts out at like 7, 8 times surges. Heck, even 6 times surges, you can just turn it on. But if it starts out at 3, I usually know if you wait a couple more minutes, it will get to 5, 6, 7. It'll get up pretty fast because people just are demanding these rides. So that's when I turn it on and that's when I strike. And that's how you should do too. It's just a little strategic planning. Now, after that, I only accept surge rides from that point on. It is a night where there should be nothing but an abundance of surge. If you are taking a base fare ride, you're doing it wrong, because this is the night where you should easily make $300, if not more. I have never made less than $500 on New Year's Eve. I'm saying 300 because I'm being generous, really. And because I stay out till like 3, 4 a.m. I know a lot of people aren't going to do that. Some people might do it for like an hour or so after and then stop. This is what also keeps the surge up throughout the night, is that there's a lot of people who after like an hour, hour and a half, the ball drops, they just want to go home. They don't want to deal with it anymore. So that is why I always stick around a little bit longer to get those remaining people. Now, the question then comes up, which service do you drive for? Do you drive for Uber or do you drive for Lyft? In my opinion, you really can't go wrong. They both surge and prime time pretty efficiently. If one app is offering the multiplier and the other is offering the flat surge, do the one with the multiplier. It's that simple. It should be noted that at least for 2018/2019, Lyft is doing a random drawing where for every ride you give, you are entered into a drawing to win somewhere between $1,000 to $22,000. Now, that's not a guarantee, but since the prime time prices should be relatively similar to the Uber surge, then it might be worth taking some more Lyfts just to have that chance. You might not win, but as they say, you have a chance rather than no chance. After you have completed the night, I recommend going home, sleeping in a little bit, of course, but try not to sleep beyond 12 because you're going to need to get up early the next day anyway. But yeah, enjoy your money, stay safe out there, don't drink, and if you have significant others who want to celebrate New Year's Eve, I would just promise them you'll get them like a nice little gift after, you know, missing New Year's Eve with them, like, you know, just to be a little nice, you know. This is kind of a nice thing to do. But, of course, I like to open up each video with a conversation, so what says you? Have any of you done any previous New Year's Eve trips? What's some advice you might have for fellow drivers who might want to drive on New Year's Eve? And are you going to be driving New Year's Eve to make that money? I would love to know. So, comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you want to read my blog, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, but there's some exclusive new content there that you can only get by being a member. And as always, blame responsibly. Have a good one.